Chapter 13, Section 3. Now, with the Reconstruction Act, with the new amendments in place, African American lives were starting to improve. They were registering to vote. They were joining or forming political organizations. They were lobbying for more political equality. They were building churches. They were building schools. They were serving as delegates to these state constitutional conventions to help write these new constitutions for the states. But some of the whites in the South were really starting to resent these Northern Republicans. And they were referring to them as carpetbaggers. Carpetbaggers were these needy adventurers of the lowest class who can carry everything they own in a carpet bag. And the Southerners were like, these Northern Republicans are coming down to the South. They had nothing better to do, and they're changing our way of life. They won't leave us alone. But you did have some Southerners that were happy with the changes. And they become known as Scalawags. These were these Southern whites who supported the Union and Reconstruction. Now, we have a number of Reconstruction supporters, but just because you were a Reconstruction supporter didn't mean you always agreed on everything. They did disagree on some of their issues. For example, land reform. Some wanted to give land to all these freed slaves. Others didn't. One thing they did agree on, though, is they wanted to rebuild the South. They wanted to improve the conditions for these former slaves, the African Americans, but also for the poor white farmer as well. And as the Reconstruction supporters are getting more and more government power, you're starting to see new constitutions being drafted. You're starting to see property qualifications for politics being abolished. They're building new bridges and new roads and new railroads. Increased services like free public education. But not everybody in the South was happy. And you started to see terrorist organizations form. And the prime terrorist organization that's going to form in the South was the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. It formed the year after the Civil War ended. The head of the Klan was Nathaniel Bedford Forrest, and he was not shy about what he intended to do. He flat out said, I intend to kill radicals. The Klan at this time is going to have 3 goals. Goal number 1, destroy the Republican Party. Goal number 2, keep African Americans from voting. And goal number 3 was to frighten African American leaders into submission. The Klan did not care necessarily if you were black or white. If you were a Republican supporter, you were the enemy. If you were African American and you were successful, you were the enemy. They're a terrorist organization. They burned homes. They burned schools and churches. They stole. All the time while hiding behind hoods and robes, trying to hide their identity. But many people knew who they were. You recognized them by their voice, by their physical characteristics. You recognized who they were. And some people stood up against the Klan. The government itself is going to pass the Enforcement Acts. The Enforcement Acts, it was a group of 3 laws that allowed military force to stop terrorism. All right, let's talk about the shift away from Reconstruction. Republicans are going to start shifting their interest elsewhere. Partly fueled by the Panic of 1873. The Panic of 1873 was a severe economic depression. And a lot of these partnerships that the Republicans had formed were very frail. And when a depression hit, they failed. And a lot of the things that the Republicans had been pushing for example, universal suffrage, where everybody gets the vote, the Republicans start backing away from. Because there were a lot of immigrants moving to the U.S. at the time, and they were becoming supporters of the Democratic Party. And so the Republicans start shifting away. Maybe we don't want to give them the right to vote if they're going to support the other side. But this panic is really going to hurt. A lot of the Republicans realize, you know what? This is all we've been paying attention to. Reconstruction, Reconstruction, Reconstruction. And then this depression hits, and the Republicans start losing some seats in Congress. And they decide to try and pass one last big Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act of 1875, which prohibited public service businesses, hotels, anything in the transportation industry, stuff like that, prohibited public service businesses from discriminating against African Americans. This was the last-ditch effort to get something passed. You know, some now saw Reconstruction as this political burden. And as this starts happening, some Southern whites are going to help shift this power. For example, if you kill African American voters, you're going to have less African American voters, and others will be intimidated from voting. And you're going to see the rise of the Redeemers. These were the supporters of white-controlled government. They want to redeem the old ways in the South. They start taking more power. It is election time. The Republicans are going to nominate Rutherford B. Hayes. The Democrats are going to nominate Samuel Tilden. This election is going to be extremely close. Tilden wins the popular vote. Hayes wins the electoral vote by 1. The Democrats are going to challenge the results because according to the United States Constitution, the electoral vote, the winner becomes the president. The Democrats challenge the results. You're going to have a mess. You're going to have people in the streets. You're going to have fist fights in Congress over this giant mess happening. And they end up compromising with the Compromise of 1877. The Democrats realize they don't have much of a case here. The Constitution's clear. And the Democrats basically say they will accept Hayes as the new president as long as he agrees that he will pull the federal troops out of the South. That's the compromise. Hayes becomes the president. He pulls the federal troops out of the South. And what happens in the South is the Redeemers are going to help bring back the Democrats to power in the South. And they're going to start undoing some of the Reconstruction legislation at the state level.